You're listening to the Nii Lamptey Show. My name is Joey, and I'm joined by Neil.
Hello.
And by Dom.
Hello.
And by super special guest, Marlon King. No, that's a little joke. We're back with a bang. How are you both?
I am very okay, thanks.
Dom?
Yeah, I'm good too. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry about the absence. Just life, innit? Let's do moments of the period. You can choose whenever you pick it from. I'm going to do this slowly, just to give you a few extra seconds to think of it. Neil, let's do you first.
I'm very glad you said period, because that gives me a lot to think about. I'm going with the fact that I was able to buy a season ticket again. Now,
yeah.
I have to confess, I didn't think too carefully about it. I just saw season tickets were available, so I just bought one. I got whipped up into the hoopla of everything. But it's good news that we're back at the Rico, and good news that I'm able to go and watch this again when the world opens up for us. So fingers crossed that's going to happen. But yeah, well happy about that.
Lovely. Dom, are you going? You got your season ticket sorted?
Yep, absolutely. I'm sort of looking forward to it being more of a day again, travelling from Birmingham to Coventry. It's like that kind of routine to it. And it was sort of weird just popping out to a game like it wasn't a big deal.
How far away?
It's
been a big deal
around the
going
corner.
to a game.
It's rubbish.
How far away are you from St Andrews?
It was about 20 to 30 minutes, combination of bus and walking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you could slink out. I remember the very last game, the Sunderland game. I slept until about 11 that morning because I'd been to a beer festival the day before, and just turning up at a game very casually with a hangover. I just can't imagine like going to a football match being that small of a deal after the past year.
Yeah, quite. Moment of the week for you? Moment of the period?
Oh God, I was going to say a lot has happened, but it does feel like we have not won a lot of games during that period. So I think that the third goal against Bristol City was probably the loudest I have celebrated a goal in quite a while. Just after that tension, after McFadzean's brain fade, and just the sheer relief. So that relief that we just didn't let it slip. It's beautiful.
Are you allowed to say McFadzean's brain fade?
Did it even happen? Was it even his fault? I don't know.
No, it's fine. It's just you might have made that one mistake, but it doesn't matter, does it? Because he's got a heart of a lion. Right, I don't know what I'm going to go for. I really don't. It's too big a period, and I'm not clever enough. I think what I'm going to say is I cannot believe that when I looked before that we have only lost 2 of our last 5 games. Are you aware of that?
It feels like about 10 of our last 5 games. What's happened there?
Does it not feel completely inconceivable? Yeah, I didn't know where our next goal was going to come from, and then we scored 3 against a fairly dire Bristol City team. But that in my head, we have lost pretty much every single week in memory, but apparently not.
No.
Yeah. Right, well, we are going to start with the defeat, though. We're not going to go and do all... I mean, God knows how many games it's been since I think we started January was the last podcast that we did. But we are going to start with 2 very, very noteworthy games, which are the last 2. Dom, you got the short straw, and you're going to talk to us about whatever the 3-0 beating by QPR was.
Yeah, so I think the main thing was just going into the game after that draw against Wickham and having basically 2 weeks off to have a big think about what we want to do for the rest of the season, how we want to line up, how we want to acquit ourselves in matches. The big disappointment, almost straight from the team being named, it just felt like we hadn't really taken in any of the lessons that we were meant to have learned by now, and also having benefited from getting a few players back fit. seeing that team, it was seeing. I know there's sort of different ways you can approach different tactics, but specifically having one up front, it feels like something that we haven't quite figured out how to make work over the course of the season. Whether it's someone a bit quick, whether it's someone nimble like Matt Godden, whether it's someone strong like Biamri, just doesn't look like we can't quite have the players to make that work. And just throughout the game, one of the main things was just trying to get the ball forward and it either coming straight back at us or Godden, Shipley or Allen taking a touch or two and misplacing their pass and then it coming straight back at us. And yeah, just the main thing about that first half was just how much it looked like a lot of the games we played, particularly in those first 10, 11 games of the season, where it kind of felt like we maybe had ambitions of trying to play football, but we just were incapable of enacting it. Just not having that quality on the ball, not having that extra bit of strength or pace up front to make those balls out of the defence work. And it was quite dire just how easy it was for QPR for most of that game to create chances to inflict pressure on us. And yeah, it's just we were just such a soft touch for that game, conceding within 2 minutes of the kickoff after such a build up, knowing that we had it would have been 9 games to get ourselves safe, and just starting so flat and conceding a fairly soft goal where we get attacked down the right side and the defence gets dragged out of position, and it is quite an easy header for QPR's winger Willock to score. And then the second goal, again, I believe it was attacked down the right where Michael Rose was caught a little flat-footed, and then the cross comes in and we win the header. But it just felt like we were just a bit of a shambles, really, in a lot of situations during that game. And then in the second half, we finally have the idea of putting on 2 strikers, and it almost looks like working. There's a little bit of a break with Walker and Shakirash, which doesn't quite come to fruition. We're on the attack with Da Costa, who I haven't really talked about yet, but crikey, that was not a good performance from him. And yeah, off the back of Darboe getting injured and a pretty poor performance against Wickham too. He hasn't been great after having quite a decent run. I thought sort of after that Nottingham Forest game, it was back to the guy we saw playing against Norwich in the FA Cup. Yeah.
If you could say one thing about Da Costa, what does he not do very well? What part of his game does he not do very well? Because I'm really interested to see what other people think.
So I think the main thing is the positioning for me. It doesn't really look like he knows where he needs to be standing. And yeah, he does seem to get caught quite a lot, just either being too deep or being too narrow or too wide. He doesn't really seem to understand where to be, particularly without the ball in that right wing back position.
Neil, what would you say? I feel like you've got.
Yeah, I do kind of have an answer. And part of me is very much aligned with what Dom's saying there, but there's also a very specific annoyance about him. And it's you look at him and he's being classed as this attacking wing back, and yet the defensive side isn't that great. But attacking side, the annoying thing is he doesn't do that very well. It's crossing. It's the going through the motion. He will just cross. It's this kind of approach to it. Well, I'm just going to cross. I don't care if anybody's in there. I don't care if there's a person in front of me. I'm just going to attempt to cross because I've done my job. And it's a very specific frustration with him, but I can't be doing with that kind of just lax approach to keeping hold of the ball. It's just, and especially some of the poorer games that he's had recently, it's just been this approach where he's got the ball and we're supposed to kind of allow him to be a poor defender because he's a good attacker, and then seeing a real lack of any attacking impetus from him as well. It's just the lane crossing that just, I'm just going to cross it now for the sake of it because at least it looks like I've done something. Very annoying to me.
I think it's a shame that Paul isn't here to join us this week. He was busy this week, but that Da Costa was in for it as soon as everyone said how good he was against Notts Forest, because there's nothing that Paul dislikes more than people liking the performance of the player. And I did think every time I've watched him since, I could just imagine Paul sitting there being like to his wife, "Told you, everyone's going to say he's amazing." Yeah, so was it?
You've just
He's
done
not
peel
covered himself
Paul.
in glory, but then I don't think he wasn't signed to be. I think he was probably signed to fill in should the worst happen, and that's what he's done. And I guess how much you expect out of him, but I suppose that goes for a lot of players. This season is. We said at the start, didn't we? We would sort of see how everyone got on with the championship, and now we're at this end of it. You'd have to say that, and we're getting ahead a little bit. But if we were to stay up next season, it's a huge rebuilding job, isn't it? To make sure that we're capable enough to stay in there.
Yeah, quite a few gaps there.
Sorry, Dom. So pick up from there.
Yeah, so as I was saying, Da Costa, when we're on a bit of an attack, gives the ball away fairly cheaply, and QPR breaking us pretty swiftly through Chair and his finish. That Marco Morosi's near post, and it was a pretty woeful attempt to save it from Marco, who, if we're talking about players who, if we stay up, we might need to move on. He's looking like one of them. Hasn't been a good season for him at all. Injury aside, I think, it's been pretty disappointing after, or it was a pretty solid first season at the club, and you're almost looking back on it now and wondering whether we sort of overrated the job that Morosi did during promotion, playing behind a pretty good defence. But I still say, he played a part in a promotion season, and it's not fun to see a player who played well last year, for the most part, struggle with a step up. It's a bit annoying.
Because I remember when we signed Morosi, Dom, I remember you saying, this isn't the best keeper we could have signed. that was to mount a sort of playoff push in League One. So there's part of me that almost thinks we shouldn't be terribly surprised that he's not been amazing. But I also don't know whether he'd be top of my list to replace. Neil, would you be in a massive rush to get rid?
I'm in a similar mindset. Goalkeepers are never top of my list when I'm thinking of like things to fix. There's so much more that can be done to kind of protect them. And I think he is just that League One goalkeeper who, he's going to knock on a few good games at Championship level, like most goalkeepers probably could. It's just a really interesting one with him specifically, where certainly this season at least he's been giving. There'll be games where he'll make two really, really quite chronic errors and two really, really quite good things. Like he'll make two really good saves, and you're like, how as fans do you balance the two? Because he's another example where, while that goal that he let in the other day was really naff, he also did a pretty decent job of stopping quite a few more goals. So it's like, how much praise do you give for somebody? And I don't want to get too far into the McFadzean conversation, but it's very similar to that, where you've done some really good stuff, but then you've basically lobbed the ball in your own net. So, do I ignore that or not? He's a very interesting one. And I guess the other thing is you've obviously got Ben Wilson there, who, by all accounts, has had a strong, by all accounts, my account, I've watched him. He's done all right. He's done well, and he's done, unfortunately, he had a couple of bad games, and he's kind of out the team at the moment. But if you're looking for a name to keep, put yourself in goal in the Championship, neither of those would strike you as a first choice Championship keeper.
The worry for me is I think we probably need 9 first team
keepers.
signings.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And I don't think you can. I don't think you can successfully sign 9 players in a summer, can you? If you want any kind of you've got to bed them in and you've got to breed some consistency. So I think you probably in the summer aim to sign 4, 5 proper championship class players, and that means you've got to make a list of who you're prepared to settle with. And I just think Morosi or even Wilson for me would be on that list compared to some of the other areas that so desperately need strengthening. Right, so Morosi's just let in what was a woeful goal, Dom, and then from there,
Yeah, not really much happened. Yeah, that was the game. Really. I mean, the game felt like it was done at 1-0, and from that point, it almost felt like we were going through the motions, just waiting for the next game and the next opportunity. There wasn't much at either end really to give us much hope that we could get back into the game. Yeah, George Thomas almost scored against us on the day that on the anniversary of the Czech Trophy win, which would have been annoying. But yeah, I suppose the fourth goal in a 4-0 defeat hurt a lot less than the first in a 1-0 defeat. So might have forgiven him that. And then I suppose the only good chance we had was Gyökeres getting a free kick. Which say it's been quite an interesting trajectory for Gyökeres, who was signed to fill a gap in attack, and very quickly it seemed like Mark Robbins didn't think he was going to be that man to fill that gap, and was just playing Biamu up front with no one else really supporting him, and he does seem to have come back into the fold lately, which I think it's pretty useful just to have that third or fourth striker around, and hopefully someone can nick a few goals. He didn't seem to be playing with a lot of confidence. I thought he just seemed to be someone constantly taking that extra touch or two, which was quite frustrating. He didn't seem to be playing with a whole lot of conviction. You know, there was sort of a few interesting things he was doing. He seemed to work quite hard, and obviously he's a bit tall and quick as well, which is going to be hard for defenders to deal with.
My question on what are you going for there, Gyökeres?
Yeah, something like that.
It's masterfully handled, by the way. That is, I've loved it every time you've said it. My question is, how many players would have to get injured before Bakayoko got back in the team at the minute?
Yeah, I think quite a lot, and you almost wonder whether if all the other strikers were injured, Mark Robbins would try and find
or come out of retirement, perhaps.
Yeah,
he is. It's going to be one of the shames. I mean, in a season where actually I think the departure of players is going to be more important than some of those coming in. One, I will miss Bakayoko, because he has been such a source of fun for us over the last few years, albeit not the biggest quality. But yeah, it's almost a shame seeing how far away he is from the first team at the minute, but I suppose it's probably for the best. Any final thoughts from you, Dom, or from you, Neil, about QPR?
I quite enjoyed Eccles when he came on for a little bit of a cameo. I thought that was good on him. I mean, you have this feeling whenever you get any kind of young players coming in, you get a handful who seem to be able to handle it, and then you get many who just freeze. And he seems to fancy himself in the first team, and I thought he came on and got hold of it. Tried to do a few bits and bobs, and good for him.
Well, perhaps more on that in the next game, Neil.
Yes, is that my cue?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, next game. So we had another game after that, and it was against Bristol City, and it was we get into this really crazy point where nothing seemed to be working, and then you've got kind of Mark Robbins just having a punt really, and just playing about with stuff, and having to ignore long-term performance quality and just kind of say, right, it's time to fiddle with some stuff. So what happened with Hyam? I missed all the pre-game, so I'm guessing Hyam was just dropped out of it because he's been a little bit off recently.
He's ill.
Okay, so not because he's off recently. Well, that's a good start to this podcast. Fucking hell. Okay, not to worry. Well, Pass came in, and I mean, we played about with the team a little bit, and obviously you had Eccles, who had shone in the little 10-minute cameo that he had in the game previously. He came in at right wing back, which is an odd position, and it was very much you've earned a start, but we've got to try and put you somewhere, but there's no room for you elsewhere kind of position. But it's like I say, we're just in this odd period where it just felt like we weren't showing anything as a team, and you're just having to throw something together and hope that it makes a little bit more sense. And just as a couple of switches here, so obviously O'Hare coming in back into the team and putting two up front seemed to offer enough life into the attacking side of things to actually make us more of a meaningful kind of competitor, because we just haven't been that recently. And the one up front thing, while has its moments, it just doesn't really seem to serve us. So yeah, we've got Robbins taking a bit of a pump with the team, and when I saw it before the match, it was it looked like it had a chance to just kind of flip things a little bit because of that kind of, like, say, flipping formation, really, when you've got a few more attacking options up front and just a bit more solidity in the midfield with Kelly and James. I mean, the real odd one, and I'll just take a little bit of a tangent here, but Hamer, he's had a good season, and I think the issue with Hamer right now is, it's a real bit of a cliche, but he's almost trying too hard. And he's still a good player, and he's not performing quite how he was earlier in the season. But where I see the reason why we've kind of taken him out of the team at the moment is just because he's not really doing the job that we need somebody in the middle of the park to do, which is actually the Kelly and James role that they performed the other day, which was just some consistency. We can't keep trying something daft or something really, really all these reaching passes that he's looking for. I think we just, the other day, after everything that went on Friday, I think Robbins saw that and thought, right, yeah, we need to strengthen things in the middle, and you don't really get much sturdier or consistent than Kelly and James in the middle. And it was, I also thought that was a smart move. And yeah, I mean, Robbins himself said it was chalk and cheese from Friday, and he's not far wrong, to be honest. It was a really strong start. It was a fast-paced start, and O'Hare was looking lively, as you would expect from him, and we got the early goal, which was necessary. And it's our main man, Ostergaard, was the guy who got it, and we've always fancied him all season long from the corners, just making sure he's getting himself on the end of things. And even the ones that drop to his feet, you feel like he's got the ability to adjust, and that was basically exactly what he did with the goal against Bristol City. It was a good finish, and you could see he's been waiting for that for a long time, with his exuberant celebration, which is right at the top of the Leroy later league of celebrations, and unnecessary celebrations as well. Storming to the corner with absolutely nobody in there, but I can't blame him for it, because he's an all action kind of guy, and you can tell he really loved that one. And it's a really strong goal and a really, really good start for us, and it kind of set the tone for us as we moved on through the match. I mean, Bristol didn't seem to be much at the races, to be honest, and we did. And it was, you had Godden and Walker kind of just linking up relatively neatly up front, and there is just something about having an option and having somebody, more than one person, to compete with our entire defence, which just makes your life and makes the game a little bit more kind of within reach and a little bit more enjoyable. I mean, beyond the attacking area, obviously we had Eccles and McCallum as wing backs, and while Eccles, I thought, put in a really nice display that in the 10 minutes they had the game previously, it is a little bit unfair to have him on the right side of the pitch and expect anything other than just doing what you can to make sure you perform okay. And that's about as all I can say about the performance. No issue at all with the fact that he performed okay on the right hand side, but it's certainly not a sustainable solution having him there. But it's nice. It was nice for him to get the option on the right hand side, and given how things have been going with the Costa and how kind of infuriating he's been in the last few games, I had no issue with Eccles going on the right hand side. And actually, he he performed all right, and he kind of did the job. My other point on the wing backs is McCallum. So again, broadly, I thought he had an all right game, but I still just can't help myself be upset about the fact that Ryan Giles is not in our team, and we got rid. I mean, he was doing such a good job on that left wing, and he was really growing into the role. And I guess the option to get McCallum came up, and we kind of forced him into the team, and you lose the threat and the pace of Giles. That's the other thing I mentioned to a few of my mates before the match. It's just the lack of pace we have in the team all round is a bit of a nuisance. And without Giles in the team, while it's history now, I can't help but look at the left hand side and just wish that he was there. But that's an aside. If we move into the second half, I thought we can continue to be strong, and we just needed to get that second goal. And very fortunate, I'd suggest, to get the penalty. I mean, you see the replay a few times, and it's one of those where the players come across each other. My view is probably not really a penalty, but nobody's really can complain that you get it because they just look like one. Thoughts?
I happened to be texting a Bristol City fan during the game, and I texted him and just said, "I'm sorry about that because that's a dive, isn't it?" And he said, "Yeah, but you're asking a player to dive when you make that challenge, and he's going nowhere." It was
a weird one, isn't it?
I think it's a very modern penalty, isn't it? It's in some respects it shouldn't be, but also, what did you expect? Like, it's a really, even if he hasn't fully got him, it's an awful decision by their defender. I don't think I would have been, as a Bristol City fan, I don't think I would have been as aggrieved at the decision as I would have been at Callas as in the decision to give the penalty, as I would have been for the defender giving the referee the option to give it and giving Walker the option to go down, because he's not even running towards goal.
And that's it. And we can look at that and through purely objective eyes, look at it and just like, we know exactly what's gone on here. There's been maybe the slightest of touches, and the ball to Walker wasn't necessarily great. I thought we could have done much better with that. And I thought, that didn't help us. We went from a really attacking situation, a threatening situation, to making life pretty difficult for Walker. But, he managed to get himself the pen out of it, which is just, again, we can call it smart forward play, but really, if you think about what a foul is, it's not really a foul, but it's 2021. You're going to get it, and it's such a weird one where even as a referee, you give that, nobody's going to give you any grief because it's just one of those which just come to you, and you're like, oh, that's an easy decision. So, it's a very, very strange pen, but we'll take it given how many we've given away this season.
I was going to say, it's about time we learn from it. Yeah.
And the amount of ludicrous ones that we've let in as well. I just thought, fair enough, I'll take that one. I'm not going to complain. And then Godden, pleased for him, stepping up, putting it away decently. He's one of those players where I thought we had a bit of a, is it in his head, is it not kind of situation with his foot. So he went down, I don't know if it was before that or after that, but it must have been before that, early on actually in the first half. And you thought, oh, is this his problem again? Is he? But then he just carried on. So maybe just felt a little bit of a twinge. But I just hope that, he's one of the, doesn't play on his mind too much, because we all see what happens when these things play in your mind. You don't necessarily play as well as you can. So, but it sounds like he got through that one okay. Good goal. Happy for him. And then it was just one of those where you're pretty comfortable. It was odd to feel comfortable in the match given how things have gone recently. And it was just going to go one or either way. We were going to just see it out, or they were going to pull it back. And typically, through no real rationale or reason, Mr. McFadzean did something ludicrous. And, we're in this situation where we've got to talk it through. Like, he's supposed to be the most senior player in the team. This sort of stuff isn't supposed to go through. He's had a whole career not to do this sort of daftness, not to play it back. But what gets me is it's not even so much to playing it back blind, which was just mad anyway, but the execution of the pass was just so poor. And, you just like I was very angry at that point because you go straight to the he's done it again kind of routine. And there have been arguments all week long on kind of Twitter about his value, and actually do you judge him for that? And I can't help but judge him because this isn't the first time that it's not just execution, but a poor decision has cost the team a goal, and it's directly cost the team a goal. And it just gets to the point where you're like, we can't afford for such daftness at the moment, especially from him. So he just needs to have a jolly good think, because this isn't, it's not really good enough. And he might be the heartbeat of the team, but you can't keep doing stuff like that. And unfortunately, the phrase "keep doing stuff like that" is true. He does keep doing stuff like that.
Dom, I'm interested to you're a as well as being a Coventry City fan, you're a voracious imbiber of football, generally speaking. So if you can take the kind of the Coventry City-ness out of it, and you were looking at McFadzean as an opposition player, for example, what would your overall sort of assessment be?
Well, if I was an opposition fan, I'd just say stick your quick eye and run at him. Because you might get something out of him. Yeah, it is very annoying that he has this in a system. It's sort of, he sort of does those things that you wouldn't expect an experienced player to do. Just a lot of the time he just seems to slightly overrate his ability to play the ball, or even his own pace, where I think quite a lot he seems to go into challenges like he's expecting to be slightly quicker than he is, and then someone who is faster than he expects them to be, and he picks up, he can give away bookings, fouls, free kicks. I've always been thinking throughout the season that basically Ostergaard is the player that McFadzean has of himself in his head. I think that's the kind of defender he'd like to be, and he's trapped inside the body of a lower league sort of trying to. But obviously
that explains a lot though, because Ostergaard's a maniac as well, but he's quick.
Yeah.
So you've got McFadzean trying to be quick, also being a maniac, also being lower league. I mean, it's a really mad combo.
Yeah.
No, go on, mate.
Oh no, yeah, that's what I say. It also is worth, I suppose, balancing out by saying that we have tried on a few occasions over the past couple of seasons to not have McFadzean in the side, and it has tended not to go that well. Where it just seems we're, just a little bit rudderless and sort of lacking a bit of character at the back, and that's a frustration. Really, sort of, ideally, you wouldn't want to have to rely on a player who is fairly error prone, but it doesn't seem like there's much of an alternative. And you can sort of say that throughout the side in a few positions really at the moment, where we're sort of having to work with players who aren't the ideal, but we're trying to figure out what actually works as a team with quite a lot of limited players who can try and get results in this division.
It's one of those really weird things with football where you can pick. This isn't fantasy football. You don't pick a players in isolation. You pick individuals who kind of make those around them potentially play better. And McFadzean is annoyingly one of those players who you have to put up with the fact that he's going to do something ridiculous because of the other areas where he does influence the game, and just totally randomly. But I always think of like the opposite example is someone like Ben Stevenson, who in himself was such a good, classy player, but didn't really make much sense with all the players around him, and it didn't work for the team as a whole. And it's just one of those football things where sometimes the individual, and Hamer, another good example, like he's one of our best players, and yet right now doesn't serve us in terms of what we need. And you have to play, and we've got 3-1 the other day with Eccles playing right wing back. Doesn't make any sense really, Eccles playing right wing back, but in terms of conjuring up some sort of unit which allows us to build upon our some sort of attacking threat, that again makes sense. So you're sort of looking at Robbins thinking, well, do you use football logic here, or do you use the best players? What's your next approach? So he's got an interesting call next game, because it might have to be, someone like Eccles might be playing right wing back again, which I say isn't sustainable. But if we've just won 3-1 and players are feeling comfortable and confident, does that elevate them to a point where actually it's a more stronger team than somebody who might maybe more comfortable at right wing back? But that's a very, very waffly point. But McFadzean was a lucky guy, because instead of having quite an edgy final sort of 10-15 minutes, we managed to finish the game off, and Gyökeres came on, and I thought it was a really good goal. I thought,
I did. I thought it was brilliant. Yeah.
Just to snap it up, snap the ball away, and then to be that clinical, which is rare for us. We're not clinical. We tend to make a daft decision, or make a daft pass. So O'Hare, one of those players who either misjudges the final pass, or just gets in his mind 5 seconds too early that he's going to make a pass, and then plays it even though it's no longer on. This time around, it was just a good clinical break. Ball went to Gyökeres, and he put it away well, and we sealed the match, and it made for a very very comfortable win, really, and very necessary win as well. I mean, the table's a bit of a strange one to look at right now, especially when you look at Rotherham and what they've the games they've got to play. You don't quite know what that's going to mean, but all I can look at is the fact is that they are down there, so they're not necessarily brilliant. They'll do well to win all of the games in hand. We do have a chance to stay in this league. And just one final broad point, and it's kind of been annoying me all season long, is for a very long part of the season, I've looked at us and thought that we were mostly a competitive team, but we're also a naive team, an unlucky team, and a team that made bad decisions quite a lot of the time. The last few weeks had made me realise that wasn't quite the case. We're not necessarily a particularly strong team, and these wins are now just going to be however we can get them, because all we're looking for is just to find a way to stay in this league and start next season at the Ricoh. Hopefully fans behind us, and the opportunity to kind of sell the club a little bit to whoever, new players, make some changes and adjustments, and really start to see if we can consolidate our position rather than kind of scrap it out. Which, one of the questions we got on Instagram was, has it been an enjoyable season? And I found that such a difficult one to answer, because I genuinely can't tell. I mean, for a lot of it, I was quite enjoying Hamer being a lunatic, and we didn't look like we were particularly shit, and we were, we was just mid or low table. But recently, it's been more of a tougher watch when we've lost any kind of attacking impetus. So, yeah, it's a weird one, but good, strong win, much needed win, and now we just need to grab a few more, I think.
Yeah, the start of the season wasn't bad, was it? We had the Reading game. We seem to have every single game on Sky every week for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the Reading game, the QPR
really
game at home. And there was a handful of games. There were weeks where we seemed to get the crap kicked out of us, didn't we? But it was offset by these sort of morale boosting wins. And then just as the season's gone on, it just feels like if there's a number of them, and I would say Hyam, Hamer, McCallum massively. If I were them, I just would be desperate for the season to be over one way or another, because they just look like bereft.
Yeah,
and I don't blame them either. I think the switches in system, the lack of fans, the games coming as thick and fast as they have done over the last few months. Where it has, I mean, everyone says, oh, it's Monday, it's Saturday, Tuesday in the Championship, but the last few months, it really has been almost every week. And with Giles going for McCallum, it's just so many players where you just think they must, like, not just even physically, but mentally just think, I just need this done so that I can work out where I am next season and try and attack it. Yeah.
Hyam's a great example, though. I think Hyam's season trajectory kind of aligns very closely to ours as a team. There was a point a couple of months ago where, for the first time in a very long time, I noticed and it was only a specific incident, but you noticed a lack of confidence in him or a mistake which impacted him for the rest of the match. And from that point onwards, while he hasn't been necessarily poor every game and that, but he certainly is. There's been kind of a dip and a noticeable kind of shift in his consistency, whereby previously he was just Mr. Trustworthy. Everybody else might hit back and forth, but you knew what you're going to get with him. The last couple of months or so, there's been a notable kind of shift in his consistency. And yeah, I think he's one of those where, ill or not at the moment, a break is actually well needed for him, just to allow him to reset both physically and probably mentally as well, because championship's hard work, and to play well every game is hard work. So I think just a little bit of a time away from the intensity of that might hopefully help him.
Right, I want to do preview and then move on to a bit of just a couple of general questions that I'll throw to you two, and then we'll chip off. So it's Bournemouth on Saturday, Dom.
Yes, and it's been an interesting season for Bournemouth, where heading into the start of the campaign, having not really lost too many players, lost Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser, and off the top of my head, that was already. And the goalkeeper went to Sheffield United, Ramsdale. But yeah, that squad looked like a Premier League squad. And the only real question about it was the manager, Jason Tindall, who was Eddie Howe's assistant, and just seemed to suggest maybe a touch of complacency around the place. And for the first 5 or 6 months of the season, they looked to be getting on all right, but there just seemed to be a lack of intensity at times to the way they went about their business, and gradually they're just starting to slide out of the playoffs, and a decision was made to let Tyndall leave. And again, there was just a directionlessness in the way they went about trying to replace Tyndall. It didn't really seem quite clear what the ambitions of the club are. Possibly, there might be a few financial issues around the place. I think over the summer it said they owed about £70 million in outstanding transfer fees. They're not in a great place, it seems, off the pitch, despite the amount of good players that they have. And it ended up with Jonathan Woodgate as manager, who last season did a pretty miserable job at Middlesbrough, and who was only really even at Bournemouth because he was appointed as Jason Tindall's assistant a week before Tyndall was sacked. And just about the luckiest guy in the Championship at the moment to be handed another crack at management with that squad that Bournemouth have. It's been reasonably sorry from Woodgate. I think he's just taking the approach that we have about 7 or 8 players who are just far too good for this division, and we can just place our faith in them, and they will probably beat most teams at this level. They're currently just outside the playoffs, but I think when you look at the form of someone like Swansea in particular, they do have a pretty good shot at getting into that top 6. And this is going to be a game they're going to look at to win quite easily. As far as who those outstanding players are, you look at the front 4 players they have at the moment, with Dominic Solanke, the eternal England under-21 international, was always just about to bang in a load of goals in the top flight. He's never quite done it. Seems to be a better season. Hasn't exactly scored a ton of goals, about 12 goals to his name this season, which isn't exactly levels that people thought he was going to be capable of at one point. But he's strong. He's got good technical skill, fairly quick. He thinks things up quite nicely in that attack. And then you have on the wings Arno Danjuma, who about a year or two ago was a Holland international. Didn't have a great first season at Bournemouth, but this season he looks like someone who should have never been anywhere near the Championship. He's just so devastating in his skill, very fast, and has got an eye for this spectacular. And yeah, really likes to attack the goal. Scored a very good goal on Monday against Blackburn, where he completely megged a Blackburn defender to go through on goal. So that is pretty scary, particularly as he's playing on the left against possibly Josh Eccles. That is going to be potentially quite a lopsided battle. And then on the other wing, you have possibly, he missed the last couple of games for injury, but he's had a good season. He's down on who scored as doubtful, so possibly could play in this game. Junior Stanislas, who quite well I just thought was a guy who's just knocking around Premier League club, and maybe wasn't that good if you put him in the Championship side. But yeah, no, actually he is quite good. Put in the Championship side, he's someone who's on nearly about 10 goals and 10 assists this season. Just another quick, skillful player who is a little too good for this division. And you also have Philip Billing, who has been someone who's been revitalised under Jonathan Woodgate. Very tall player, but very classy and skillful. He can just glide past players in the attacking third. That makes it a very, very strong attacking unit for Bournemouth, who can afford to leave players like David Brooks and Jack Wilshere on the bench, which is ridiculous. And behind that, they've got a midfield too, who is worth talking about: Jefferson Lerma and Ben Pearson, who I think over the past couple of seasons in the Premier League and Championship for Lerma and Pearson respectively, have picked up by far more yellow cards than anyone else. They're just very niggly, foul-y players, but they're also annoyingly very good at football. They've got that mixture. Lerma is this sort of tall, gliding midfielder who would also leave his leg in the challenge. And then Pearson, who's this little tyro who will just go up and down the pitch and nip into tackles, make great passes, dribble past players. I mean, he's got a lot, but the only reason he hasn't really made it into the Premier League yet is the bookings and a few injury issues. But yeah, that is a very daunting sort of attacking unit. And then at the back, it's sort of those typical Bournemouth players. You're Adam Smith, you're Steve Cooks, you're into any two generic English first and second names kind of players. It's a very daunting prospect, and particularly given the way we've been playing away from home, you'd be bold to predict us even getting a point out of this. But yeah, I think more than anything, sort of hopefully opportunity to lay down a bit of a marker as to the sort of mentality we want to approach games this season. A little too often we've walked into these kind of games and just felt like we know we're going to lose. And as soon as we walk out onto that pitch, which isn't good, I think even just approaching that game, not necessarily taking an attacking mentality, but mentality that we're going to try and work really hard and make things difficult for them, and maybe try and attack them a little bit in little periods of the game. That is going to be something, because we don't really want to take anything too heavy into next week's game against Rotherham. It's a tough game. We'll probably lose, but let's see what we can do.
At least we're meant to lose this one, aren't we?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's. I think it's like you say. It's not. This isn't the game, is it? It's the Rotherham game. Is the game. And I remember when we first set eyes on Hamer, and we're questioning how good he is. Like, is he? Where does he sit? And we played Bournemouth, and it was like the answer is good, but not as good as Jefferson Lerma. Like that's a Premier League quality, actual, real midfielder. You go through that team, like you say, Danjuma is very, very good. I really like Philip Billing, and I'm not someone who's a good Championship consummate, but they've got a lot of players that are just ludicrously. They're not championship players, are they? It's like it's silly. And like you say, Stanislas, I didn't expect.
Where did Josh King go?
Everton.
Everton, is that because he's class? Oh, I remember he was still there early in the season.
He
I
went
just
in
thought
January, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I don't know whether
just
he's injured.
another
'Cause
example.
I don't remember seeing him play for Everton yet. But yeah, the thing will be, like I say, I'm not sure, outside of getting absolutely Norwiched by them, I'm not sure how too downhearted I'll be from there. I wanted to finish off with. I was going to ask two questions, but actually, I'm going to ask one very simple question of both of you that you can answer as short or as long as you wish to. The question is: are we going to stay up? Neil, you first.
Yes, we are going to stay up.
Okay.
That was allowed, wasn't it? I took your
You're
advice.
absolutely, absolutely right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I was just giving you the space there to see whether you were going to elaborate on that further. Dom, are we going to stay up?
Yeah, I think we're just going to do it. I think that result on Monday was very important. I thought after the QPR game, the tide felt like it had turned, but the combination of that win, a performance where we looked a lot more interested and intense, and also a few results going in our favour, that looked good. But it's the relegation battle. There's always going to be one weekend of results where one team in that battle is going to get one, which you never expected them to, and you start panicking again. So, yeah, but yeah, I think it's fair to say I think it's more likely than not we'll get the job done. We'll get just enough to get over the line.
Second, possibly rhetorical question: can you call it a relegation battle when so few of the participants appear to be trying to stay up?
Yeah, I really like Dom's word there. Interested. Like that's kind of. We haven't seemed very interested recently, but then, like you say, the two teams are almost gone, and then you've got Rotherham, who have been poorly for a long time. So, you know, it doesn't. This is what's got me. I've not really looked at the table all season because I've not felt like we needed the battle, and that's why I'm still maybe oddly confident.
Even Birmingham look like Bowyer is sort of is probably. Me and Paul, funnily enough, about a day before Karanka got sacked, me and Paul were talking on text and said, we've just got to hope that Karanka stays because he's he's taking them down with aplomb. And then as soon as he went, we were like, oh no, who's it going to be? And then it was Lee Bowyer. So, but even Birmingham, we've stacked like a couple of results together. Really, they won that game 1-0 with a second penalty because they missed the first one. And did anyone see that? Did anyone see that penalty? The foul in inverted commas for that penalty.
No, I missed that one.
It was the guy was about 5 foot away from the person who was alleged to have challenged him. Like it's one of the worst penalties I've ever seen. But it's the point I'm trying to make is that even like what looks on the face of it like a Birmingham fight back isn't even really happening. Like they had to get given a free penalty twice. And then they drew the other day. Like you're like, oh, they've pulled themselves out of it. You're like, not really. It's sort of just by dint of the wind changing a little bit, and they sort of have picked something up. It just seems Huddersfield getting beat 6-0. You just think, what's going on? Isn't no one trying to? Because I agree with you. The final thing I will say is I agree. I thought up until about 2 weeks ago, I thought we were dead and buried. Now I think that we will stay up, but it will be exclusively because someone else goes down.
God, that made you feel proud, eh? Everybody else is so much shitter than us.
But I almost feel at this point like we could maybe lose almost every single game between now and the end of the season, and I'm confident that the other teams won't pick up enough to do anything about
God.
it. Which is why I'm a bit more sanguine about Bournemouth as well, because I kind of go,
Yeah.
well, as long as Huddersfield, Derby, Birmingham, Rotherham, Luton, Blackburn could get sucked into it. That would be killer.
That'd be pure Mowbray, wouldn't it?
It'd be absolutely delicious if he left on the final game of the season saying, "I'm not being backed." Were they like,
It is what it is.
1 point above the relegation zone? Nah, listen. This club's too great for me to do a bad job, so I'm going to leave. I think. Yeah.
He's become such a rubbish Tony. Such a ruining that name.
It's a shame on that. What is good is whenever anyone tweets anything about Blackburn not doing well at the minute, is that there's such a massive pile on from Middlesbrough fans, Cov fans. He's left such a trail of destruction behind him that it's nice scrolling through it and being like, if anyone didn't expect this by now, you're just like, yeah, you're right. Right, okay. Anything final to add before we wrap up?
Well, I had a couple of questions, and not that they're necessarily any good. I've just slagged them off before I asked them, but I did ask people to give us some questions. So,
Go on.
Harry Bellis goes, do we stand a chance of keeping Ostergaard?
No. Well,
No.
Good.
But I would imagine only financially speaking. I think he would come back, but I don't think we could afford to buy him. And I don't know if he's out of contract. I assume he's not.
He's out of contract, but Brighton they can trigger another year.
But also,
Bit
I
like
think that he's
Walsh.
probably done well enough that someone ever so slightly higher up the Championship would go for him.
That's my feeling.
Yeah.
I think he'll have another go at the Championship probably, and it'll be somebody.
But I also don't
stuff.
think it would be, top end. I think he's a reasonable Championship defender. I'm not sure he's like top class. I think he's all right.
He's probably not as good as he thinks he is. I guess because
I think he's got a little bit of Callum O'Hare walking around with a boombox and a blue curly wig about him. There's I suppose it's the Mo Konyiches. People. He's enthusiastic, isn't he?
Yeah, that's helpful. That's how you make yourself as a footballer. Try a lot.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be rude to him. I think he's a good player, but there does seem to be a sort of tide towards saying, he's absolutely brilliant. He's one of them players that I think that time will remember him fondly, more fondly than possibly was worthy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally I'm okay with him. I think he's a good player, and I'm happy that he's in the team and that sort of stuff. But I just, based on what was said about him, I expected, this player who was way above where we are, and I haven't quite felt it. But that's not to say I haven't liked him being in the team. It's just that he doesn't been totally stand out for me.
Yeah.
Richard Howell. Oh, not a question. Just saying what a superb job we're doing. That's fine. And then also, we've kind of done most of these. Actually, I won't ask any more. I've stolen most of these as my train of thought, and not giving anybody any credit. But, so yeah, that's that. This time next week, yeah.
Perfect, all covered. Right, anything apart from the questions? Dom, remind us of where people can read your writing.
Yep, it's at sidewayssammy.com.
And for anybody that hasn't read it, and I assume everybody listening will have done, but just remind us what your schedule is and what they can expect over there. Have you gone?
Yes,
okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I think you dropped out.
That's okay. Just remind people who haven't been over there what they can expect and what your schedule of output is like.
Yeah, but basically at the moment, because previews for every game, and because I can actually watch every game live, offer my 3 points on the wrap, usually about an hour after every game as well. So plenty of content, player profiles as well when they hit certain landmarks. And as of this week, the season review began, the process of putting that together.
Wow.
Leviathan.
Little find and replace at the end if it turns out that we get relegated.
I'm basically going to write it as if we get relegated and everyone else stays up. That's my superstition.
Beautiful. Right, it's been a pleasure to be back. Remains to be seen whether we'll be back weekly, but just for the short term at least. But we will be back as soon as we can. Thank you very much, Dom.
Okay, it's good to be on.
Thank you, Neil.
Cheers, boys.
And thank you, listener. Bye.